As a corporate lawyer at a top London law firm, I record literally every minute of my working life. Time is literally money, and that can suck. But for you, that's a good thing because I have recorded every minute of my time for the last week. So but you're wondering, how much sleep do I really get? What's so important that means I need to be in the office until 2 a.m. or is it just a culture thing? Do I have time to work out? Do I get anxious when I'm doing anything other than billing my time to client work? How much time do I spend on my phone? Do I ever get time to watch TV and do normal stuff? Do I feel exhausted? Well, I'm about to tell you exactly what I did with all of my 10,080 minutes last week. And just so you know what to expect from this video, I spent as much time filming as much as I could. That means it should feel kind of like a day in the life, but it's a bit more realistic because a day in the life not representative of every day. Every day can be different. And so over the course of a week, you'll get a much better sense of what I actually spend all my time doing as a corporate lawyer, from when I wake up through to my morning routine, going into the office, what I actually do all day, what time I leave the office, what time I get to bed, how much sleep I get. So let's dive in to 6:52 a.m. on Monday morning. So question one, everyone always asks me, what are the hours like as a corporate lawyer? I'm actually pretty glad about how this video turned out because this turns out to have been a pretty busy week. This is definitely a top 20% busyness week, probably not 10% because I didn't have to work either of the weekends, and Monday, Tuesday, and Friday nights weren't that late. So again, this is pretty busy, but not certainly the busiest it can get. But let's start off by going into how much I slept each night. So after a great weekend with my mates, partying pretty hard for Friday and Saturday night, I then had a very solid night's sleep for 7 hours, 15 minutes on Sunday night before waking up on Monday morning. So Monday didn't start out too badly. I went to bed just after midnight. Then, as you will see shortly, things got busier and busier throughout the week. By Thursday, it was around 2 a.m. because I was working later and later to try and get something out. But even though this was a pretty busy week, I did manage to average Monday to Thursday 6 hours, 25 minutes of sleep, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I got at least 7 hours every night. So, as I said, this is not at all the kind of sleep deprivation stage you can get to in this job, where you can also go for maybe a week with 3 or 4 hours a night at times, but that generally only happens, in my experience, once or twice a year. Disclaimer, it's also worth saying I don't have children, so I get more sleep than parents, and particularly parents who do this job. And adding all that up, that's a total of 2,893 minutes of sleep in the week, or 28.7% of my week. In terms of when I was getting up, I usually try to get up between 6:45, 7:45, the absolute latest. But because I was working late, I pushed my schedule a little later than I would usually like. It's something you get used to in the job. The reason for this is that when we're busy, generally more and more work comes in throughout the day, and so you end up having to work later and later, and therefore the only chance you get to get a good night's sleep is to sleep in a little longer. Then once I am awake, my morning routine revolves around getting up and out of the house as quickly as I can. Monday to Thursday, I go into the office usually. So in total for the week, I spent 18 minutes shaving. I did that 3 days, 6 minutes apiece. I then spent 35 minutes brushing my teeth and using the bathroom in the morning. I don't shower before I go into work because I use the gym or pool at work, as you will see very shortly. Another 22 minutes getting changed into my work stuff. I keep my gym stuff at the office just for ease of transportation. I know I'm getting changed into my work clothes before I've showered and stuff, which some people will find gross, but anyway, that's what I do. And then a total of 19 minutes making my coffee in my portable coffee cup to take into work to drink after my workout at my desk. And then I'm out the door. And this is where my location massively comes in. I spent a total of 88 minutes commuting to work last week. That's 22 minutes for the 4 days I commuted in. During that, I spent about 30 minutes sending quick emails, and then the rest was listening to the Rest is Politics podcast. I got through 2 episodes in about an hour on 1.25 times speed. All right, once I'm at the office, I'm then heading straight upstairs in the lifts to the 23rd floor, grabbing my gym bag and heading down to the gym on the 5th floor of our building. Running through my workout sessions for the week. On Monday, I did a 1 hour weight session, chest, back, biceps, triceps. Tuesday, I swam for 45 minutes. Wednesday was a rest day, so I had a 45-minute stroll up and down the quay right by my work in Canary Wharf, just thinking about life, not listening to anything. Thursday, I did a pretty intense bike session that I set for myself with sprints and climbs for 52 minutes, if you include the time I spent stretching afterwards. And other than the time I spent walking when I unplugged from everything, I was listening to podcasts and audiobooks during all of that time, including when I'm in the pool, because I have some special headphones that I can listen to in the pool, which maximizes the productivity of these workout sessions with also being able to listen to stuff I enjoy listening to. On Friday, I was working from home, so I did an at-home workout doing some abs and Pilates for 34 minutes, so just a quick session before I got to work. On Saturday, I then ran just under 5k in around 26 minutes. And finally, on Sunday, another rest day, Beth and I went for a nice walk around Greenwich Park together for 37 minutes. That's a total of 5 hours, 9 minutes, or 3.1% of my week. I did exercise every day. It is a huge priority for me since I've been working in this very intense job, and I really think this is possible for everyone. When you look at 3.1%, 5 hours in a week, versus how much time I spent on some other things like watching TV, when you compare those two, you'll see later in the video that really committing to 5 hours of exercise a week really is not that much and really is doable. After that, I head back to the changing room at the gym, or just to the shower at my house, and I shower up, put my deodorant on, get ready for the day properly, and I took a total of 140 minutes showering and then getting changed after showering last week, so about 20 minutes a day. And then the final part of my morning routine before I get logged on is to grab breakfast. So when I'm at the work canteen, I'll get either porridge with loads of cool stuff on top, or avocado on toast with scrambled egg. Or if I'm working from home, I'll usually do some chopped fruit, some yogurt, and some granola. That way I'm getting a good mix of breakfast throughout the week. Importantly, I don't waste lots of time on breakfast. I have something that's healthy, quick, and have it at my desk while I'm logging on. And that way, I only spent a total of 50 minutes last week, 5 to 10 minutes a day, preparing and getting breakfast myself. So once all that's done, I generally sit down at my desk and eat my breakfast and get logged on for the day. And before we get into the nitty-gritty of what I then do throughout all of the days I spend working as a corporate lawyer, you obviously know, because you're watching this, that I have a YouTube channel and a business around my job. And given how little time I get to spend on that in the evenings and at weekends, the biggest priority for me is working productively, getting as much done in as little time as possible. And one of the tools that I've been using for the last 10 years to help me do that since I first got a Mac is today's sponsor, Clean My Mac. So since I started using a Mac way back in 2014, one of the first things I did was install Clean My Mac, and now, 11 years on, the latest version of Clean My Mac makes caring for your Mac, making sure that it's working quickly and cleanly, oh so easy. The sleek, user-friendly dashboard gives you everything you need. You can start with a thorough scan of your Mac using their Smart Care feature, and then you can eliminate duplicate files and improve system functionality using the My Clutter feature. Also, Cleanup will remove the system cache, development junk, and unnecessary files that take up space and can slow down your Mac. The Moonlock anti-malware engine that's also included scans for and removes viruses, so that's a really nice feature. Plus, the built-in assistant is now always on hand with helpful tips and fixes to improve performance. Plus, I really love their easy access menu that gives you a quick overview of your Mac's performance and a daily recommendation. But the biggest reason I love Clean My Mac is that 8 years on from having bought my Mac that I still use now back in 2017, my Mac is still running smoothly, and I think that's hugely down to Clean My Mac. And I've therefore saved thousands splurging on a new MacBook. So if you're a Mac user, try using Clean My Mac to make your Mac last longer, run faster, and also to cut out unnecessary spending on a brand new MacBook. So yeah, you can try Clean My Mac completely free for 7 days through the link at the top of the description, plus get 20% off using my code LIAM20. Alrighty, getting back into the work day, and I am now at my desk. Average start time last week was 9:27, which is pretty typical for me. I recorded a total of 53 hours and 14 minutes of work last week. That's like actual time spent with clients or working. And of that, 4 hours and 24 minutes was non-billable. So the majority, 48 hours and 50 minutes, was billable time that was billed to clients. Just to emphasize again, this is definitely on the busier end of weeks, not the busiest I've ever been, but it gives you a pretty good sense of what it's like and what the intensity is like when we are decently busy as corporate lawyers. So what do I actually spend all of that time doing? Well, there are 5 types of work that I'm gonna run you through in chronological order of the order I would like to do them and did do them last week largely throughout each day. So to start the day, just as warm up while I'm having my breakfast, I'll generally spend no more than 10 minutes just replying to any quick messages or emails that have come in overnight. 2 reasons for doing this. One is it warms me up, it gets me into a work mode ahead of doing my first deep work session of the day. And the second is it keeps clients happy happy. If I respond first thing in the morning and they see, right, yeah, Liam's on it, I know he's going to deal with it even if it's later in the day, that makes them happy. It's just good for managing expectations. And then once I've done this in the morning, I'll then spend no more than 10 or 15 minutes generally during the rest of the course of the day, just quickly replying to messages or emails. There might be Teams messages that come in from colleagues, for example. I don't let that in general interrupt my focus work sessions, so they might not get a response for 30 to 60 minutes. I will break that if there is something that is truly urgent. I know I'm waiting for a message, but in general, people are okay to wait that long. So totting up all the time I spent on replying just to quick emails and messages, I totaled 110 minutes or 1.1% of my working week. All right, once the admin session's out of the way, I then log in for my first focused work session of the day. Generally, put AirPods in and I try to focus for an hour, have a short break, and then another hour from around 9:45 until midday. And last week, my biggest focus type of work is work type 2, drafting. I spent 23 hours and 31 minutes drafting last week. So first up, what is drafting? Drafting is actually writing the legal documents that clients are going to sign and date and that become legally effective and binding, either as contracts between parties or just as formal documents. So first main bit of drafting I did that took up the vast majority of that 23 hours last week was on a deal where we're working for a client who is looking to buy in an auction process a company in the aviation space, so basically to do with planes. I've worked on 2 deals in this space before, so I have a bit of experience, and therefore I was allowed to hold the pen on what is called the SPA, the Sale and Purchase Agreement, the main document in an M&A transaction, which actually affects the sale of one company to another company. Generally what happens is the seller's lawyers produce a first draft of the SPA, they send it to us, so it will say, I promise you not very much helpful information about this company, and if any of this is wrong or anything happens after we've sold it to you, I'm not liable at all, go away. And clearly when you are buying something, you want them to say, this is all the information about the business, all of this is true, I can tell you about the financials, I can tell you about all of the assets this company has, and I'm gonna stand behind the fact that all of this is true, and if any of it's untrue, then you'll be able to sue me later for lots of money. Now that is hugely simplifying, pretty complicated document. Another example of changes I made were that the company we're buying has a number of subsidiaries and we need some of that to be reorganized, i.e. those subsidiaries to be like shifted around and assets to be moved around before we can buy the company. And so we put in provisions that require the sellers to do that before we buy. And to do all of this, I'm usually thinking about what a client wants, and that is always specific to the deal we're working on, and then looking at different precedent SPAs, documents that have been signed previously that we've worked on, and considering, okay, there are bits of this I could use to help me do what we're doing now. And I then create something that's an amalgamation of different past stuff, plus some new stuff from my head that then the partner reviews. That hopefully achieves what the client wants. And the other thing to bear in mind is this is a competitive auction process. There are other people trying to buy this company. So we have to try and get the best position for our client in the document, but we also can't take unreasonable positions that make them look like they're trying to get stuff that just isn't fair. And then the second bit of drafting I did were some board and shareholder resolutions to dividend, i.e. pay money up out to shareholders, money out of companies within a large corporate structure for a client we regularly work with. So I spent a total of 1,411 minutes or 14% of my week drafting. Generally, I tried to do it as much as possible in the morning, but by the time we got to Thursday and Friday, we needed to get this draft SPA out back to the other side, and that meant that I had to work on it basically all day. Then the other really deep work style of work that I did last week was some time spent on written legal advice. So this is where clients come to you with a question or questions, generally about a contract they've entered into, or a question of law like, can a company in general as a matter of English law do X? Often when they come to us because we're so expensive and they wouldn't come to us unless the question was difficult, it's a combination of both of those. So on Wednesday morning, I was advising a client who entered into a joint venture agreement. That's where there are 2 parties and they've agreed together to do stuff. That was all going okay until one of the companies stopped paying as it was supposed to. And our client was wondering, having paid as it was supposed to, what can I do to get the best legal position for myself possible? And really the question was twofold. One, there was an amendment to this legal agreement that hadn't been entered into properly. It hadn't been executed as a deed under English law, even though it was said to be a deed. So we needed to look at like what happens if an agreement isn't properly signed as it should have been. And then the second question, which was more more difficult was, okay, so there are some really tough consequences under the agreement if people didn't put money in. Under English law, could a court turn around and say, actually, those were too harsh. You shouldn't have done that, even though it was in the agreement that you could. Then when you took those really harsh measures, actually it was disproportionate, it was unfair, and the contract should never have said that in the first place. For law students out there, this is the question of whether liquidated damages can be unenforceable as a penalty. So basically that meant doing a bit of legal research, looking carefully at the issues and typing out a response to the client, then running that through our litigation team to check they also agreed with what I had said, and sending that over to our colleagues in another office to send on to the client. And because I'd actually done quite a lot of the work for this in a previous week, on Wednesday morning it only took me 3 hours and 7 minutes. Only. All right, the penultimate type of work that I did last week then was what I'm going to call legal review, sometimes called due diligence. And this really is where we're looking at documents. So that can be either contracts or other similar documents that have been entered into, or we could be looking at a report that's, for example, been prepared by another law firm about a company, and we're analyzing that to identify issues and try to produce some kind of report ourselves or some kind of note for our client that informs them of, these are the key issues if you buy this business from a legal perspective, this is what we recommend doing about it. So just give you a little bit more detail on this. If, for example, you were buying mine and Beth's backpack business, Menos, you would want to look at contracts we have with customers to make sure we aren't offering a warranty or a guarantee that says our bags won't break for 100 years. And you'd also want to know about my relationship with my supplier. Like, you get these bags from overseas, you order them in, so what are the terms that you have with that supplier? When do you have to pay them? And also, critically, if someone buys the business, is there a provision in your contract with your supplier that says, if someone buys this business, then we reserve the right to no longer supply you with any bags? That is a type of provision, a change of control provision that can be included in agreements. So I spent a total of 13 hours and 48 minutes last week on legal review, mainly for one client on Monday and Tuesday. We're acting on the buy side again for a client who this time is looking to buy a real estate business that leases plots of land to other people. And the legal review I was doing was looking at a vendor due diligence report. So a report that's been prepared by the lawyers of the seller that says, this is what the business has, this is all of the legal issues there are with this business. Sometimes sellers prepare it for you as buyer. But I was looking at that report, trying to find holes in it, areas where I didn't think the other lawyers had gone into it in enough detail, and preparing a detailed list of questions for what's called a legal expert session. So a session where we get to ask questions to the other side's lawyers about the company. That took place on Friday. The reason this took so long was because I hadn't really done any work on this matter before, so I had to, first of all, read what's called a confidential information memorandum, which is a sales pamphlet for the business, about 70 pages, flick through that to get a pretty good understanding of the business, then read the legal due diligence report in detail, which is about 100 pages long, and then come up with good, meaningful questions about all the different areas of the business ahead of the call on Friday. And then the final work type is maybe obviously calls, meetings, negotiations. You need to speak to people. So there are 3 types of call, meeting, etc. that I would generally have. One, which is probably the most common, is internally with other lawyers, generally more senior people than me, to discuss things I'm not sure about. So generally I'll call the partner and be like, look, I've worked through this document, I've been marking up the SPA for the last 3 days. Here are 10 things that I'm just not sure on. What do you think we should do? Then the second type of conversation is a conversation with the client. Generally maybe 5 of those points that I raised to the partner, he's like, yeah, that's a pretty good point actually. I'm not sure what we should do on that. We need to ask our client and do what's called taking instructions. So generally, as private practice lawyers working for our clients, our job is to do what they tell us to. Now, we have to come up with the legal framework and language to achieve what they want to achieve, but if it's a commercial point, we need to take instructions from them. So we might need to say to them, look, the sellers only want to allow you to sue them for a year after you sign this agreement. Do you want to be able to sue them for longer than that? That isn't a decision we can make for them. That's a commercial decision they need to take for themselves. And then the final type of call is calls with the other side. Negotiations over a document to run through, like, okay, this is a point, we need our clients on the call and us on the call, and we need to just agree points on the call. Or alternatively, like I had on Friday, we had a call with the sellers as the buyer's lawyers to just ask some questions about the business our client is looking to buy. So I'd say this is the one that can vary most. When you're in really intense negotiations and meetings, you could spend 6 to 10 hours a day stuck in those meetings. That is when this job gets really, really intense, because obviously you're not able to do the focused drafting work you need to when you're in meetings all day, so it has to happen at night basically. So this can massively vary. So last week I actually only spent 7 hours and 6 minutes, or 426 minutes, that's 4.2% of my week on calls. Now that leaves a total of 232 minutes unaccounted for, about 4 hours, and most of that last week was spent interviewing candidates for an award that my law firm sponsors. So I was basically interviewing candidates, then giving feedback, and then also attending calls to discuss candidates and basically decide who was going to win. Now, clearly, there's also some other time I spent at the office. So let's quickly run through that. So lunch, I went for lunch 2 days last week with friends, only for 30 minutes and 40 minutes, often would be longer. I might go 3 times a week for an hour, say, but because I was busy, just 70 minutes on that, and then another 38 minutes grabbing lunch to eat at my desk. So a total of 108 minutes on lunch. I spent another 4 hours and 31 minutes for the week, about an hour a day, chatting to friends at the office or just grabbing a quick coffee, standing by the coffee machine, catching up with mates. Now, this is one where I often be quite considerably more than this when I'm not as busy as I was last week. Then at the end of the workday, when was I actually leaving the office? So Monday started so well. I left at 7:42, came home, had dinner with Beth for an hour, and then logged back on for maybe an hour. Then Tuesday, 10:45, not great. Wednesday, 10 past midnight. Thursday, really rough, working all day on that SPA markup to try and get it out as soon as I could on Friday. So worked until 1:32 a.m. And I then spent another 92 minutes on commutes home, Monday to Wednesday getting the DLR, and on Thursday I got a taxi. And because it was pretty late, often I do listen to podcasts, but because I just wanted to chill out basically before I was going to bed, I generally listened to music and did my timesheets on my phone on the way home. In terms of dinner, Monday, as I say, I came home, had dinner with Beth, lovely. Tuesday to Thursday, I ate dinner at the office at my desk. I generally try to do this less now than I used to, often trying to come home and then log back on later, but I did do it quite a bit last week just because it was really intense when I was working. I was in the zone, I didn't really want to come home, plus Beth was really busy at work herself last week, so wasn't necessarily around for dinner. But on Friday, I did finish at 7:15 p.m, so Beth and I cooked dinner together, and that brought total cooking time for the week, between 45 minutes spent on Friday with Beth, and then a little bit more time over the weekend, to a total of 112 minutes for the week. Just to emphasize, this is not normal. I normally do spend quite a bit more time cooking and like cleaning up after cooking than this, but when I'm busy at work, other things take priority. I did get to eat with Beth on Monday, Friday, and Sunday, and that was for a total of 118 minutes. Plus then we move on to TV. Friday, I got a good 3 hours and 30 minutes watching Drive to Survive, basically all evening chilling with Beth. Monday, I did watch 45 minutes of TV. Tuesday, 30 minutes to chill out before going to sleep. Add that to another 3 hours and 17 minutes over the weekend. You get 542 minutes of TV time, or 5.4% of my week. Again, to come back to what I said earlier, that is more time than I spent exercising in a week where I was insanely busy and really didn't feel like I was watching that much TV. This really does show that even when I was really busy, there was a little bit of TV time that I probably could have reallocated, particularly over the weekend, to doing exercise to make sure that I was getting enough exercise for the week. So no matter how busy you are, really try to prioritize some form of just gentle exercise, even if it's maybe on one weekday when you're not too busy, and on a Saturday and Sunday each day. Whew. Right, so all that sleep, exercise, showering, changing, emailing, drafting, legal advice, legal review, calls and meetings, commuting, eating, cooking, and watching TV was what I think of as my corporate lawyer life. And we have exactly 2,069 minutes, or 34 and a half hours left to fill. And I'm going to run you through all that YouTube, business, fun, socializing in no more than 2 minutes. Right, so you're watching this, which means you know I have a YouTube channel and a business around my job as a corporate lawyer. And because I was so busy at work, the only time I spent working on my YouTube channel during the week last week was 1 hour, 20 minutes revising a thumbnail for my video on the habits I use to focus, which by the way, you should check out right after watching this. Then fast forward all the way through to Saturday morning, and I spent just over 3 hours, 189 minutes planning my next finance video. Obviously, if I told you what it was about, I'd have to kill you. And then on Sunday, I actually filmed the 5 1-minute habits to focus for 8+ hours a day video. And then in total, between setting everything up and actually recording the video, I spent 3 hours and 51 minutes on that. Add to that 24 minutes emailing sponsors and sorting invoices quickly on Sunday evening, and you get 524 minutes, or just under 9 hours, spent on my YouTube channel last week. This is a little below my average of 10 to 12 hours a week, just because I was so busy at work. Then Saturday, after my morning run and planning my video, my mum came over for a total of 6 hours and 23 minutes spent chatting at my flat, going for lunch together, and then out for a lovely walk around Greenwich Park, followed in the evening by dinner and drinks with my friends for 5 hours and 4 minutes, bringing total time socializing over the course of Saturday afternoon to 687 minutes, or about 11 hours. Sunday, woke up feeling slightly hungover, so decided to start the day cleaning because I didn't feel like doing much else, for a total of 59 minutes plus 43 minutes of stuff during the week, like loading the dishwasher. So that gives you a total of 102 minutes of cleaning and tidying. I spent another 75 minutes planning my bike trip this summer with my mates on booking.com, another 31 minutes reading the FT, just chilling. I watched a bunch of TV, which I've already covered, and another 2 hours and 22 minutes reviewing property investments from a property sourcing company, as Beth and I are considering real estate investment at the moment, 37 minutes heading to the supermarket, and 82 minutes generally chilling and not doing much. And that leaves 389 minutes, or about 6.5 hours, of miscellaneous. I honestly don't really know exactly where this time went. I think maybe taking out the bins, toilet breaks, messaging friends, just other small seconds of time throughout the week that I seem to have not recorded. So yeah, this has been a very full week in my life as a corporate lawyer, minute by minute. I really hope you've enjoyed watching, and if you have, please do give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the video get seen by more people. So yeah, let me know what you thought down in the comments, and I look forward to speaking to you again very, very soon. Thanks so much for watching.